There are people who can't. The rush isn't a problem for them, they like it. I can't spend my days, my time being in a place that has nothing to do with me. That's how we win. Process, my friends, one day at a time. I know that sometimes we want things to be resolved overnight. That doesn't exist. What if you don't like what you do? Is it cruel? Many times, but it's never too much to say. We need to have our eyes on what we want to achieve, because that's how you deal with time that time. It won't come back. The time you're unhappy in a certain place, in a relationship, in a certain situation. This time. What am I saying all this, my friends? That we are all very sick? Physically. And emotionally. I notice these younger generations, much more interested. Happy. I've been accumulating things. They look at this, I don't want that for myself. What do I say? Do you think about what you're going through, with your difficulties too?
Good evening.
It is with great joy that we begin another video here on the Inspiration Channel. Today I have a festive look, like I'm going to a wedding, right? Because I was giving a lecture at the Educators Congress. And I ended up coming straight here. A garden for us. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, okay? I have a daily observation, which is the fruit of learning, which has become increasingly intense in me, because I would like to share it with you at the beginning of this program. What is my observation of time? I am spending my time. I believe, my friends, that we become happier. If we can say so. You know, I prefer the concept of fulfillment, rather than the concept of happiness. Sometimes the concept of happiness, when it occurs to us, comes very empty, right? And we end up limiting happiness. Some moments no, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about feeling satisfied, even when having problems and difficulties in life. Sometimes, the way people understand happiness excludes life's difficulties, and that's not true. No one can live outside of life's difficulties. And that doesn't prevent us from being happy. When we talk about human fulfillment, it seems we understand difficulties as unavoidable parts of our lives. So I feel more fulfilled to the extent that I have a good relationship with time. In the coming weeks, we'll have Isabella Camargo here to help us reflect on burnout syndrome, which is precisely when overwork makes us sick. It's the whole process of mental imbalance, born from our excesses, especially at work. That day, we were talking about how we have difficulty dealing with the present moment. You can observe we are increasingly like that. If this was a characteristic of other times of other eras, can we say that we are practicing it a lot? This inability to deal with the present moment has been a constant in our lives. As I speak, you think about what you're experiencing, your own difficulties. You can observe. We are rarely fully present in what we are doing. We are rarely fully present in the place where we are. For example, I just came from a lecture. I might be here talking to you, but my heart is already at home, which is where I would like to be right now. And because I'm anxious to get home, I end up not doing well what is asked of me now, so I schedule my agenda in a way that I'm never where I am. I'm never where my body is. Strange, isn't it? It seems that we don't put our totality into what we do. I'm not saying that this is happening to me right now. On the contrary, I am very satisfied to be here, especially during this time that I'm traveling, so I'm here in Sao Paulo I'm very happy to be recording. I could easily have skipped my commitment, although I was direct, but I didn't want to stop here, so I'm here. I feel happy to be here. To talk to you, to speak with you about the difficulties we face. Do we need to put our hearts into it? To reflect. We need to reflect on the life we live. So I feel very satisfied to have this space. I feel extremely happy to be here. But I can't deny that in many moments of my life, I'm not where my soul is. Where is it? Because my mind is elsewhere. And we know that you can't separate the body from the soul, right? Initially, just a way of saying it. But when I say that I'm not here, or when I'm there but not there, it's because my thoughts are in another situation. Just this week I was talking about this. Yes, we're talking to someone, and they're on their cell phone. Sometimes we're talking about serious things, important things. And the other person, in turn, instead, that's just a way of speaking. But when I say I'm not here, or when I'm there but not really there, it's because my thoughts are elsewhere.
Just this week I was talking about this.
We're talking to someone and they're on their phone. Sometimes we're talking about serious things, important things, and the other person, instead of being there listening, looking at us, because it's important to look at the other person while they're talking, we're far away, talking to someone else, dealing with a situation that isn't there. That person is right there in front of me. That's disrespectful, isn't it? And often, in our family relationships, this habit becomes socialized. And if you complain, the person still says, "But I'm paying attention to what you're saying, aren't I?" They're giving me a little attention, but it's not the kind of attention I'd like to have to address that issue, of course, if it's a trivial matter. But if it's a situation where I need the other person's attention, it's a lack of respect for the person speaking. But that's how we are. We're having difficulty being where our people are. And then, my friends, we start to create an inner unease that can even turn into an illness. Work-related illnesses are intimately linked to dissatisfaction. The person is dissatisfied. They go to fulfill their time. There's no satisfaction in doing what they do, in working at what they do. And, consequently, it generates emotional distress that sooner or later explodes in various ways. It's an imbalance, psychiatrist. Or even physical problems, because our emotional dissatisfactions have spilled over into the body. It's into my body. Why is all this happening? So I have a bad situation occupying my mind. My mind, because it's under the power of a bad, oppressive thought. It ends up creating dysfunctions for the rest of the body. For our entire organism, our entire functioning. It's intimately linked to the brain, right, which is where everything happens. It's where our emotions happen. I've said this here several times already. When we want to talk about affection, we use the metaphor of the heart. Oh, my heart is so hurt. My heart is wounded. In reality, this is just symbolism. We get wounded in the brain. It's the thought process. It's where everything is architected. It's where I know who I am. What are you? It's in our brain that we have affective information. And all of this sends messages to the rest of the body. So, there are many emotional dissatisfactions, fruits of this strange way of living, that reverberate in our body. And it's interesting because we've already talked so much about this, haven't we? I believe that you yourself, in your conversations, often talk about this difficulty you're having with time. And why don't we make favorable decisions, my friends? Why do we postpone so much if we already know that we are unwell because of our strange relationship with time, of never being where we are, or, sometimes, of delaying decisions that would change our way of dealing with time? Yes, because there's no other way to deal with it. The best way to modify your relationship with time is by making decisions. I've testified to this many times, but it's never too much to say. When I got sick, I needed to take medication. About 20 to 30 days later, I was more balanced. The medication brought about an improvement. Who else has experienced this? Panic disorder, now this burnout syndrome. Depression knows exactly how much we actually need medication. Medication is fundamental because sometimes what we're lacking is chemi. The body, because of the stress we live with, doesn't have the hormonal production we should have. We don't have it because of our sometimes irregular and careless diet. We don't have the necessary nutrients precisely because we don't have physical activity, because we don't produce the enzymes. These are the hormones necessary for well-being because the whole body is powered by hormones. Hormones to wake up, hormones to feel happier, hormones to sleep. We are a mechanism constantly regulated by hormonal production, which is the first to suffer when we experience stress.
So me?
Can I get sick because of an ex? My lifestyle is making me sick. If I eat poorly, if I don't sleep well, if I delay my rest, if I neglect my rest time doing things that could wait, if I don't make an effort to schedule time for physical activity, for body care, it's very likely that sooner or later I'll pay the price. I'll get sick because chemically I become disorganized. It's all in our chemistry. Our bodies are very intelligent, my friends. We produce chemicals for everything. But if we neglect the care we give to our bodies, unfortunately, the body can't, for a long time, change the unfortunately, the body can't, for a long time, right? Change what we need to maintain ourselves, to keep ourselves well. So, when I got sick and experienced the improvement that the medication brought me, the first decision, and I think it was the most sensible, was, since the medication has now balanced me, I would make the necessary decisions to intervene in what is making me sick. And what was making me sick, which became clear as day, was my relationship with time. The way I was dealing with time. Definitely, I wasn't born to live in the rush I was living. It's not in my nature. Do you understand very well what I'm going through? There are people who can't live any other way. The rush isn't a problem for them, they like it. I don't. I enjoy being there. But suddenly, I had a life that didn't allow me to be there. I was constantly on the go, here and there, and to those who live. Years. More than 10 years in this style. So, the moment I felt capable. It's the moment I felt more balanced, you could say. I went to make the decisions. Because if I didn't make those decisions, I wouldn't be being fair. Are you with me? With my medication? With the doctor who's treating me? With the friends who are interested in my recovery? With my family? Are they worried about me? With those who are actually worried about us, because it's not just the family that's worried about us. In fact, a good part of the people in our families sometimes interpret us as ATMs. Remember when we were talking about money? I'm talking about those people who are genuinely concerned about us, who are interested in our well-being. To be fair to all of this, I went to the chessboard of life and said, this needs to be changed here, because otherwise I'll fall asleep. Not even asleep, because that's an inappropriate term. It gives the impression that I'm sleeping all the time, right? Numb. I'm numb from the effect of the medication. I'm feeling good, and I'm going to continue living with the reasons that made me sick. It's not intelligent. It's not intelligent to continue living, provoking what made me sick. Because sooner or later, the medications lost their ability to do for me what my actions should do. And of course, then the medication, aided by an attitude that changes life, works wonders in us, which it's not doing alone. And you're not judging that medication's responsibility to heal you? Why am I saying all this, my people? Because we are all very sick physically, mentally, and emotionally. Physically. Physical illnesses, emotional illnesses. Spiritual illnesses that are also linked to our lives, they contain. Mentally. What is our relationship with time? Somewhere in there? Are we neglecting ourselves? Or because we don't have time to take care of ourselves? Or because we are imposing ourselves? A job we weren't made for. A life we weren't made for. Why is it so important for us to know how to manage this? I need to update my identity. I need to look at myself, at my essence. To perceive everything that surrounds me, what my choices are, what I've been doing, and very honestly ask myself if everything I've been doing really has anything to do with me. I can't spend my days, my time being in a place that has nothing to do with me. It's like Daniel who is here today, okay? Good evening, Daniel. Thank you for being here. Daniel is Muse. Imagine putting Daniel to do a job that has nothing to do with music, and sometimes they need to, right, Danny? To survive. But it's good, because all his aptitudes lead him to this place. What if you don't like what you do? Is it cruel? Paolo accompanies me everywhere. Paolo likes to drive, doesn't he? Paolo finds satisfaction in driving. Imagine if he didn't? I've never seen this boy in a bad mood in all these years I've been with him. I've seen him tired. But being grumpy, dissatisfied, not always willing or available, helps me much more. It goes far beyond the function of driving engines. But is he happy? He earns his family's livelihood from his work, but he earns it with happiness, with joy. People, it's very sad to have to spend a whole life working in a situation or in a place, in a job that has nothing to do with you. Is that why you, who have children, are there? In the process of choosing what they will do with their lives, let the children express what they like. Gone are the days when we forced our daughters to go to that college because that was their father's profession. That's their mother's profession, and you are very proud of them, okay? Maintain that joy, that pride you have for your parents, but don't impose on your children the life you wish you had lived. Because that's how you deal with time, and that time won't come back. The time you're unhappy in a certain place, this time will not return. Make the decision that is favorable to you. And, consequently, you will benefit the people around you, because happy people don't bother others. You can observe the most difficult people, those who are always bored, always upset with their own lives. They have difficulty seeing joy, happiness, and other things. They are heavy, difficult people because they are not happy dealing with time. So, dealing with time. Wisdom in dealing with time is fundamental so that we have satisfaction. The satisfaction of realizing you are in the right place, doing the right thing. Nothing can be superior to that joy, my friends, knowing that we are doing the right thing. Because there you will face difficulties, but you face them with joy. If you chose a profession that you truly enjoy, it's not that it will make you more successful. Sometimes people choose a profession that will yield better financial results. For that, they give up happiness. Although our children are much freer to do so, I perceive these younger generations as much more interested in being fulfilled, in being happy, than in accumulating money. Real people look at us. They look at the parents who worked their whole lives and didn't even have time to enjoy the results of their work. Like the critics, I don't want to live like that. How many parents today are? Why is it difficult for parents to pass their businesses on to their children? Why do they look to their parents? They observe how they lived during the time they had that company. They realize they weren't happy because they were managing just to have money for this and that. They look and think, that's it, I don't want that for myself. The transition is very difficult because sometimes our children are looking at our way of life. They are showing a lot of wisdom, a lot of sensitivity in realizing that we didn't know how to handle time. And they don't want to make the same mistake, and they are right. Don't be ashamed to suddenly realize this. What advice do you need from your child? They are freer than you are. They are more able to help you with advice than you are to them. Sometimes the roles are reversed and there's no problem with that. Sometimes your child is already enjoying a freedom, a courage to be who they are. That even bothers you. It bothers us because we can't reach our full potential. We have a tendency to reach our full potential, wanting others not to achieve the best of them either? Well, there are many young people who are managing to live responsibly. I'm not talking about debauchery. I'm not talking about actually taking human fulfillment seriously. I was born for this. I want to work with this. I don't care if I earn less. I know it goes against my father's wishes. But I want to do what gives me pleasure, what gives me satisfaction. And you, rest assured, because where there is satisfaction, you will find life's difficulties. Because sometimes we have this discourse, right? They want what's easiest, but it's not. Even when we're happy, we have difficulties. What are difficulties, right? It's one thing to face the challenges of my profession, my way of life, and be happy like that. It's another thing to live through the challenges of a situation that isn't mine, that isn't for me, that has nothing to do with me. That's double the suffering. So, my friends, let's be attentive. God wakes us up to this all the time so that we may be the right people in the right places. And is it worth it? He's enjoying a freedom, a courage to be who he is. It even bothers you. It bothers you because what about when we can't reach our full potential? We tend to want others not to reach theirs either. So, there are many young people who are managing to live responsibly. I'm not talking about debauchery. I'm not talking about actually taking human fulfillment seriously. I was born for this. I want to work with this. I don't care if I earn less. I know it goes against my father's wishes. But I want to do what gives me pleasure, what gives me satisfaction. And you, rest assured, because where there's satisfaction, he'll find life's difficulties. Because sometimes we have this kind of discourse, right? They want what's easiest, but it's not. Even when we're happy, we have difficulties. But they're the right difficulties. It's one thing to face the challenges of my profession, my way of life, and be happy like that. It's another thing to live through the challenges of a situation that isn't mine, that isn't for me, that has nothing to do with me. That's double the suffering. So, my friends, let's be attentive. God wakes us up to this all the time so that we can be the right people in the right places. And is it worth it? We should reflect on this every day before going to sleep. Today I was who I could have been. Today I did what was truly my duty, what I should have done. I was honest with myself. I sought the best part. I was honest in wanting and fighting, working, overcoming difficulties to have the conditions to assume my place. This is an indication of human action networks. When we realize that we are overcoming difficulties that make sense, these are sufferings that make sense, because they are contributing to our price. We are back. Thank you very much. Thank you to you, who spread the word. Then you must be finding it strange, or in a suit and tie. It's a sponsorship from the Santa Luzia Funeral Home. Your death is our joy. working, or at the agricultural funeral home. 10 years planting man on earth. The inside cries and dances, which is what you wear to a wedding and to a wake. Now nobody wears a suit to a wake anymore. It's not just news, buried. The person never wore a suit. Poor guy, when he dies, he'll be wearing someone else's suit, which doesn't even match him.
Anyway,
It's because I was giving a lecture here in Sao Paulo. I came straight home, so people will think I've become a pastor now because I'm wearing a suit. Otherwise, tomorrow there will be news on Facebook, in no man's land, to say that I got married, I had children. My friends, I want to invite you to join our membership club here on the channel. I have a link in the video description. Access it to learn more. I also want to thank all the members who are already part of the club and have been supporting our evangelization work. Thank you very much, everyone. Getting back to the subject. It's an aspect worth thinking about, isn't it? We can't measure our own Christianity. There's no ruler to know how Christian we already are. But there are some interesting indicators for us to pay attention to, one of them being the quality of our friendships. We have good friends, building good friendships. What I find interesting is that sometimes we become more and more demanding in terms of relationships. The more we grow in God, the higher our standards for relationships become, and the more we tend to disregard people. It doesn't mean we become arrogant or proud, does it? No, on the contrary. Experience with Jesus simplifies us. And why do we become simpler? We also become more straightforward in saying what we want or don't want. There are people with whom you sometimes feel that sensitivity of never being able to tell the truth. You know that close friendship is no longer good for you because that person only seeks you out to gossip. They're always trying to bring out the worst in you. I always like to give this example, a married man who wants to be faithful to his wife, his children, his family. He needs to know very well
who he's associating with.
Who are the companions, so to speak, who have influence over him. Because if he wants to be faithful, of course he can't let his guard down. He can't lower his guard so that people who aren't even remotely interested in his fidelity are around and influencing him. So, sometimes in our relationships, we don't always have the discernment to realize who should be closer to us at this moment in our lives. In the same way that when we are sick, we need to see doctors regularly. Friendship is the same thing. When we are vulnerable, we have a great need to have trustworthy people by our side. I remember that's what made me. It was very supportive. I could look around and recognize people I trusted. And trust is built over time, right, folks? It's no use wanting to trust someone overnight. That's why we need to be very careful with the newcomers. It's not that we're going to close the doors to new friendships, is it? But it's about paying attention to whether those who have just arrived are worthy of entrusting your life to them. Trust is gradual. Even in that, we show our anxiety, don't we? We want to stay up all night, friends, overnight. We want to speed up time. What risks could this attitude have? This choice? When we talk about time, about dealing with time, I really like this text from Ecclesiastes. And you must have heard it many times. Everything has its time. It's here in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3. Everything has its time. There is an opportune moment for everything under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh and a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time for love, and a time for remembrance. The time of hate. In times of war, the time of peace. I find it interesting because the text, it takes the main verbs that are part of our lives and shows that between one achievement and another, there is a necessary time. When we cut ourselves, when you cut your finger, if you didn't need to cut it, we will have the healing time, which is the time of the body gathering all the elements of healing. And you can only touch that thing again after the scab falls off. If, when it starts to heal, you go and touch it again out of curiosity, out of anxiety, you delay the process. And sometimes we do the same thing with our issues. A person, for example, who needs to break free from an addiction has to go day by day. Sometimes it's not even day by day, my friends, it's hour by hour. When the addiction is very intense, we need to experience it 1 hour at a time. I overcame my alcohol addiction here now. During this hour, I managed stay away from the glass, establish a new one, fight for something new now, for this new time, and so we go. If I think I'm already healed and I pick up the glass, I'll just take a little sniff. Sometimes we go back to square one. We do the same thing, and we see it happening to other people when they are trying to free themselves from abusive relationships. What kind of abusive relationship is that? Let's give a simple example. That relationship that you know only hurts you. The person doesn't want what's best for you, uses you all the time, cheats on you. I can't live without it because it's like that. Between the decision that you need to do something for yourself and the final result, there was a liberation some time ago that you don't even know when it will be. The fact is that if you don't live the victory of each moment, you will never be free from that person. You will be eternally dominated by them. You will eternally live in that dominant relationship that hurts you, that disadvantages you. I remember that I followed a case once of a girl who was very determined that she needed to end the relationship. Do you have any idea about her? She had already been beaten several times by the boyfriend. Physical violence, not to mention the emotional violence, which was precisely is isolating her from all her friends. At first, she stopped having the bonds of friendship she had. She stopped being with that friend who was once very close. She stopped being with everything because he imposed it. Little by little, he was sowing discord. He was going to start by bad-mouthing those people to her. In short, he wanted her to be vulnerable. Because a friend can warn you, right? Look, be careful with this new boyfriend you got. The more alone a person is, the easier it is for them to be dominated. And after he distanced her from all her friends, he started distancing her from her family. And for me, that was the first step I took because I noticed it was someone I knew. Is this right? That whoever loves us wants us to be together with the people we care about. The feeling is possessive and unhealthy when you're not able to think about the good I need to receive when I'm there. You want only you to do good? Then you end up depriving the person. That's not love. When do we realize that the other person is trying to distance us from the people who love us? We have to turn on a warning light. Something is wrong. And that's how he succeeded. He distanced her from her friends. He managed to distance her from her family. And then, yes, he established a relationship with her, a relationship of great aggression. In every aspect of aggression you can imagine. All its ramifications. Verbal violence, emotional violence, and finally, physical violence. I remember when I met her, I was one of the people she had stopped seeing, and since she was someone I liked very much, I made a point of looking for her. At first, she resisted talking to me. And when I met her, I had just come across a very serious argument between them. She was very fragile, and she cried a lot. She cried a lot. And she asked me for help. And I remember, my friends, that the help she so desperately wanted was very simple. What did she want? To build within herself. What is simple and, at the same time, difficult? She wanted to build within herself the conviction that what he was doing to her wasn't heaven. Look how fragile a person becomes. She needed to hear from someone that what he was doing to her wasn't heaven? That a person who loves you doesn't do what he was doing? Look at the point a person reaches when they are under the control of another. What we call the hijacking of subjectivity. I have a book about this. It's called Who Stole Me From Myself. I said, but why do you need someone to tell you this? If you already know it was worth it. You need to believe. And I don't believe in myself anymore. I need to believe. I need to hear this every day. I need to talk about it. I need to speak freely about it because I'm aware that it's hurting me, but I still don't have the strength to fight against it. And so it was. We met, right? Whenever we could, we would talk on the phone. It was to help her strengthen her resolve, her awareness that the life she was living wasn't fair. I remember, folks, that from that decision until she was able to leave that boyfriend, it was more than 2 years. A long time because she kept relapsing. Always in the same way, always the same manner. When he realized she was leaving, that she was freeing herself from that relationship, from that kidnapping he had set for her, he would play the victim. He said he needed her, that he needed to talk to her, and he always had an excuse. Was it some piece of clothing he'd forgotten at her house that he needed to pick up? Or was it something about a credit card that he owed her something else? And he started to realize he was right. He knew exactly how to move the pieces on the chessboard. And she kept falling for his story. And every time she fell for it, because they would get back together. "I need to go get a t-shirt that I'm sure is there." She would say, "No, I'll send you a t-shirt." 10 minutes would pass. He was there at the door. Then, all affectionate, he wasn't the aggressive person he used to be anymore. She'd go back to square one, and when she finally had the courage to tell me why she came back, because sometimes she wouldn't even tell me, I'd find out from other people, my God. Why is he so different? I'm sure you won't. I knew you wouldn't. Believe it. I prefer to believe him again. Anyway, folks, everything is the result of an addiction that happened and a person who isn't able to live through the transition of liberation, because all liberation requires a transition period. Nobody becomes free from emotional or chemical dependency overnight. Just like we don't become addicted overnight. An abusive relationship doesn't develop overnight either. Little by little, the imposition will happen. And then she stayed in this mess for 2 years. I remember that. When was the last one? The last episode between the two of them. Even the police were called. He assaulted her a lot, and assaulted her. At her father's house, her father wasn't there when that whole mess happened, that whole story anyway. And I always told her, if you don't have the courage to correct this bond now, sooner or later it will end in tragedy. There's no respect here anymore. She always says, but what do I do? I can't. Well, you can. You need to. A little bit each day. Today you overcame your dependence on him. As I said before, when dependence is deeply rooted within us, we need to overcome it minute by minute, hour by hour, day by day, so that later you have the privilege of accumulating months of overcoming it. And sometimes, my friends, the separation needs to be very radical. It's no use having his phone number. I blocked him on my cell phone. But you don't block him, but he does. Are there other ways to reach you? So I blocked him, and some time later I felt sorry for him. All ways of self-sabotage. Are you not learning to live the therapy of time? The people of Israel, to reach the Promised Land, needed to live 40 years of wandering and transition. The Promised Land was only possible because they crossed the desert, and the desert is not an easy place to cross. It's not pleasant to go through the desert, but when we think that the Promised Land awaits us, then we feel motivated to live day by day. We need to have our eyes on what we want to achieve. And it's not outside of ourselves, no. Because sometimes we think very quickly when we talk about achieving something. We always talk about a financial result, a house we want to buy, an apartment, a job, a college degree we want to pursue. It's nothing. The problem is that these material achievements are part of life. But we also need to pay attention to what we need to achieve within ourselves. What do we want to achieve? I want to be a freer man. So, when I look to the future, I see Fabio much freer than he is today. Freer than others think, than others believe. Sometimes we are so imprisoned that we are afraid of what others are thinking of us, what others are believing of us. It doesn't make sense. What opinions matter? Those that are committed to our truth. The people who are truly part of it. The advice we establish to guide us? To influence us, yes. Does it make sense to pay attention? But we all in some way need to. Is there something to be achieved? Far away, not here now. It's not an apartment, it's not a house, but it's a way of being that I want to achieve. To begin with, the girl who knew she needed to achieve liberation within herself, because liberation from the boy who oppressed her wasn't outside of her. It was inside her, here, a chemical dependency. Because yes, in the same way with a person, dependent on marijuana, dependent on cocaine, dependent on crack, we can also depend on each other. This is chemical dependency. Relationships can also be classified as toxic. A relationship that is addictive, I am addicted to that person. Like a person addicted to cocaine knows that cocaine is harmful, but can't stop using it. There are people who are addicted to others. You know, they are already tired of knowing that that person is harmful. That proximity to them is toxic. It brings no benefits. But they can't change. So, what we need to achieve is not outside of us. It's inside. I need to cut this sticky substance that binds me. I need to be free. And it was interesting because that girl, with a lot of struggle, with a lot of difficulty, it wasn't easy. In the end, she managed to remove that boy from her life. And he continued to torment her for a long time. But thank God, she was very strong, very aware that she had made the best decision. She wasn't sorry, no matter how much she suffered. And the suffering gradually diminishes, right? It settles down. Nobody stays eternally terrified by that suffering of loss that comes when you break up with someone you love very much. I love someone who is dependent. I don't know what to call it. But the fact is that she was, at that moment, aware.
Of what benefit was that? I want to reach out.
To begin with, the girl, who knew she needed to achieve liberation within herself, because liberation from the boy who oppressed her wasn't outside of her. It was inside her here, a chemical dependency.
Because, yes.
In the same way with a person, dependent on marijuana, dependent on cocaine, dependent on crack. We can also be dependent on each other. This is chemical dependency. Relationships can also be classified as toxic. A relationship that is addictive, I am addicted to that person. Like a person addicted to cocaine knows that cocaine is harmful, but can't stop using it. There are people who are addicted to others. They're already tired of knowing that that person is harmful. That proximity to them is toxic. It brings no benefits, but they can't change. So, what we need to achieve is not outside of us. It's inside. I need to cut this sticky substance that binds me. I need to be free. And it was interesting because that girl, with a lot of struggle, with a lot of difficulty, it wasn't easy. In the end, she managed to remove that boy from her life. And he tormented her for a long time. But thank God, she was very strong, very aware that she had made the best decision. She wasn't sorry, no matter how much she suffered. And the suffering gradually diminishes, right? It settles down. Nobody stays eternally terrified by that suffering of loss that comes when you break up with someone you love very much. I love someone who is dependent. I don't know what to call it. But the fact is that she was, at that moment, aware that it was beneficial for her. That's how we win. It's a process, my friends, one day at a time. I know that sometimes we want things to be resolved overnight, but that doesn't exist. Everything is a process. Everything will pass through the cultivation of our expectations. And when we know we're on the right path, is life worth living?
In each.
Because this time that stretches before us will always be favorable to those who want to arrive. Thank you very much for your company. May God shower many blessings upon you. If you need to experience a rupture, the end of emotional or affective dependence, if you need to make a decision at work, may God's blessing strengthen you so that you can act favorably, your overcoming, your growth. He who is Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Thank you very much.